Hello and welcome to Hammer Time, a Hammer horror podcast, part of the Evolution of Horror Network. I'm Becky Darke, a film critic and amateur, and I'm joined by my co-host, human encyclopedia of film and TV and Hammer superfan, Kevin Lyons. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Becky. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thanks. Yeah.
Good.
Cannot complain. I will, but I shouldn't.
We do. We know there's no point in complaining, but I mean, come on. One of the few pleasures we still have left in life is having a good old bloody moan about things,
isn't it?
Good old
moan. Exactly.
Absolutely.
In this podcast, Kevin and I are watching and discussing every horror film in Hammer's back catalogue. And this week, it's all pirates and smugglers and marsh phantoms with Captain Clegg from 1962.
This is a frightened village. Here, it is wiser to close your ears to a scream in the night.
Our Hammer Time discussions are all spoilerific, and we go into plot details and chat about the endings of films. So if you would like to watch Captain Clegg before you listen to the episode, you can pick it up on physical media. And as I keep saying, you should do, because, Kev, this is another banger. What a brilliant film.
What a terrific little film this is, isn't it? I absolutely love this one. It's not at all obvious that this was going to make it into our final list, but I'm so glad that it did.
Well, I am as well. And I've got to say, I had very little knowledge of this film, and looking at the images, hearing the title, even reading the synopsis, I wasn't like super excited about it. I was curious, but I wasn't like fizzing.
Yeah.
And then by the time the end credits rolled, I was like, oh my God, is this going to be the first Hammer film that's going to make me cry? I was so emotionally invested.
Absolutely right. I mean, it's one of those films that, I was the same when I first saw it. I thought, no, it's a smuggling film, isn't it? How many of those have we seen in my time? You know, when I was growing up, there seemed to be smugglers and pirates everywhere on various screens of different sizes. And I thought, do I really need to see another one? And my God, I'm so glad I did, because it's not just a film about smugglers, is it?
It's not. We'll come to it, but it's a very multi-layered, and as I say, like really kind of touching and weirdly beautiful for a pirate film about smugglers and, you know, the Kingsmen coming in to just sort of raid alcohol bootlegging and things. Like, it's just amazing.
If you get through that final scene, so beware spoilers, we are going to talk about that. If you get through that final scene with a dry eye, you're a better person than I am, because I get very misty-eyed watching the end of this film.
I was not expecting it. It caught me very by surprise. So let's get into the big question first. We'll get it out of the way. Is Captain Clegg a horror film? I'm
going to say yes, it is.
Okay.
Although I do understand that there are a good many people who would, I think, quite effectively argue that it isn't. But I'm going to say it is. I think Michael Carreras, the producer, probably would have said, no, it's not a horror film. Because I think he saw the idea of adapting a literary adventure novel as a way of expanding Hammer's palette even further. You know, we spoke last week about Taste of Fear and the psychological horrors. But I think inevitably it's being made by Hammer. I think, you know, it was inevitable there was going to be a bit of horror in there. And just look at it. I mean, here's the evidence, right? You've got access to secret tunnels through a tombstone. You've got smugglers using a hearse to transport their illicit gains. They disguise themselves as the ghostly marsh phantoms, of which much more later, and they are bloody terrifying. Yeah. Dear old Sidney Bromley turns up at the very beginning of the film to be scared to death by those phantoms. I mean, it is a proper gothic horror film.
You've got people sleeping in coffins.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
there are terrifying scarecrows with moving eyes. I mean, I would argue that this is Hammer's first foray into folk horror.
I think you'd have a very good point, actually. Yeah, I mean, we could add things like, you know, the witches, maybe, Devil Rides Out, possibly, perhaps even Quatermass and the Pit, you know, all that things about the ancient past coming to affect us in the present.
Of course.
But this is their first attempt at it, long before it ever had the label, of course. But, yeah, it has. And those scarecrows, they are terrifying. There's a wonderful line, isn't it, in it, in there, isn't there? When one of the king's men spots them, because they're signalling.
That's right.
The scarecrows are signalling to the rest of the gang. They're acting as lookouts. And he sort of moves his hand to signal. And one of the king's men just looks at it. He says, "That scarecrow just moved." Mm-hmm. And that's really chilling.
It is.
If you've ever lived in the countryside, all those people who are living in the countryside right now, in the English countryside, maybe even the Scottish countryside, I don't know whether you have scarecrows there, whether it's an English or British thing, they're all doing the same thing. They're all getting the shudders now at the very thought of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite an uncanny thing anyway, isn't it, a scarecrow?
It is.
And
yeah, it's that kind of simulacra thing, isn't it? That it looks like us, but we know it isn't.
No, and it's completely static.
Yeah.
And you know it's meant to be static. And so when it does move, it really puts the willies up you.
It's very creepy. And the way they're shot in this is fantastically eerie. It really is. So, yes, I'm going to say it's a horror film. I respect people who say it's not. I can kind of understand where they're coming from, but I'm quite happy to nail my colours to that particular mast and say, yes, it's a horror film.
I mean, I completely agree that I can understand why people would argue it wasn't. And I was in that camp. That's why I can understand it, because I was like, that's not a horror film. I'm quite happy to be covering it because it's a really good film and I'm excited to talk about it, but I'm not convinced it's horror. And then as I was going through my notes and kind of writing them up, I knew that I wanted to sort of ask you about this specifically. I think at the end of the last episode, you'd said, even then, I think you sort of preempted the idea that maybe it might. And as I was writing up my notes and kind of going through the ones that I'd taken as I was watching the film, these things kept popping up that I was like, I mean, that's a horror trope. This is a horror trope.
Yeah.
And even down to the folk horror descriptor, there is this idea of like a closed community. They've all got a secret. These outsiders are coming in and sort of trying to disrupt the community, stick their noses in. The community isn't having it, and so kind of close ranks, and then the outsiders start to die, and and then you get moving scarecrows with eyes, and I was like, yeah, okay, fine, I'm having it. It's horror.
and it very good. We'll touch on this hopefully as we go through, but it does a very clever thing where it subverts what became the sort of the norm for folk horror, where the outsider is victimised by the close community. In this case, it's the outsiders who are the monsters. Yeah,
it is.
They are really appalling people, the King's Men. By the time it finishes, we are totally on the side of this smuggling gang. Absolutely.
They're horrendous.
Oh, they're horrible people. Horrible.
Okay, so the plot of the movie, I've taken this one from IMDb because the Letterboxd one was rubbish, so I thought this one was better. I'm still too lazy to write one myself, so I got it from IMDb. In 18th century England, the Royal Crown sends Royal Navy Captain Collier and his crew to investigate reports of illegal smuggling and bootlegging in a coastal town where locals believe in marsh phantoms. But do they? Do they believe in them?
Yes. When you read out that description, I'm sorry, I know I crowbar this into most episodes, but it does remind me a little bit of sort of like 70s Doctor Who or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely
you'd expect
does.
UNIT to turn up at this small town where there is all these marsh phantoms on the prowl, so... yeah, but that's just a sort of twisted way my mind works. Everything sounds like Doctor Who to me, so what can I do?
I can see it. And the other thing, and, harping on about these scarecrows, but they genuinely really freaked me out, so I will do. There was something about the kind of those sorts of 70s... folk horror kind of like TV plays and things that I know actually we are going to come on to mention a couple of because of people who were involved in the production of Captain Clegg. But there was something that, I mean, this is made in 1962 and it's really preempting stuff that we start seeing a lot of in British TV and in British film later on.
It is, and I think it does that thing where... the majority of the people who were making these films lived either in or near cities because that's where the work was. And, a lot of the audiences always have been in the big cities because that's where there's more people. So it plays on that sort of thing about, if you go into the countryside, it's all a bit strange, isn't it? there are odd people out there in the country, and you need to be very careful of them. And having lived in the country for a while, I have to tell you, that's very true. But not quite not quite as exaggerated as it is in folk horror, but it's a very different place out there. And, us city slickers can find it very difficult and very menacing in some ways to be out of the country. Intimidating, that's the word.
Out of our comfort zones.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. Just the little things like, I lived on the Isle of Wight for so long, and when I moved to London, that first Christmas I was at university, I went back to stay with my sister on the island, and I'd already got into the routine of just thinking, I'll get out of bed, have some breakfast, go and catch a bus and go somewhere.
Yep. When
I got back to the Isle of Wight, got out of bed, had some breakfast, went to catch the bus, there was a 25-minute wait for the next bus. And it was like, I really am in a whole different world, aren't I? And that was only after 3 months I'd sort of completely forgotten that everything is slower, it's different, it's very nice at times.
But there's a different rhythm to life in the country, isn't there, than there is to the big city.
That's exactly it. And I think sometimes these films play on that clash between what our city slickers are up to and what those strange people in the country are up to, because they're bound to be up to no good, aren't they? Of course they are. They don't want to live in a city. What's the matter with them? They're obviously a bit weird. They're doing something, aren't they?
I mean, to be fair, they are doing something in this film.
They are in this film, exactly, yes. Like I say, by the end of it, you are totally on their side.
No, without a doubt. So the film was written by Anthony Hines. We last spoke about him doing screenplay stuff with The Curse of the Werewolf, so not very long ago.
Sure.
That was his first. This follows on from that. And we really liked The Curse of the Werewolf as a film. I think it's, right up there.
Yeah.
But I think we both agreed that the script itself left a little bit to be desired.
Yeah.
This feels far more successful in terms of the screenplay from Anthony Hines. Do you agree with that?
I do. And when I think about it, I think the reason possibly is that Curse of the Werewolf may be, and this might be a strange thing to say, but when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. It might be a bit more experimental. It's trying something different. This is a much more old-fashioned film.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Curse of the Werewolf, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I love old-fashioned. That's a recommendation rather than a criticism. But I think Curse of the Werewolf, it doesn't feel much like the werewolf films that had come before.
Yeah.
This does feel a bit like the smuggling films that came before. It's just an awful lot better.
It's just a really good one, yeah.
It's a really good one, and with a lovely sort of layering of Hammer Gothic horror on the top. So I wonder if maybe because it was simpler and more streamlined, and also I guess, Hines was honing his art the whole time. So, he gets it bang on right here. The pacing is perfect. I watched it again last night just to sort of, go through, take a few more notes and so on. And I was struck by how quickly it went.
Yeah.
Suddenly we're up to that, soon to be famous as we talk about it, final scene. And it was like, my God, what happened to the rest of the film? That went so quickly.
Yeah.
So, the pacing of the script is absolutely perfect.
It's beautifully paced. I agree. I mean, at no point did I even sort of glance at my watch or sort of get fidgety or anything. I was just
not at all.
And it was, zipping along. And the dialogue's really sharp. There are some really lovely sort of comedy moments in it. The characterization feels really rich. It's not kind of just leaning back on this kind of class warfare thing that we've seen a lot of, which I always think works very well, but it's not not sort of lazily just going along with that. It's a bit more complex, I suppose. And I just thought the whole thing felt, I think you're right, that Hines has honed his craft. And for me, it just felt like this is a real step up in terms of just his writing and the story that he's constructed, I
think you're right. You hit the nail on the head there when you said it was a very funny film.
It is.
It's not a sort of, it's not like one of Hammer's comedies where they got this other comedy trombone noises and everything. It's not like that. It's more witty than
really
anything
witty.
else. They've got, characters say things which are very, very funny, but they're not done as a kind of, hey, look at us, we're doing a gag. it sort of flows organically from the characters, and it's a very, very funny film. And one supporting actor in particular, who we're going to sing the praises of a great deal later in the episode, gets most of the funny lines.
Yeah.
And he's hilarious.
I know
throughout.
who you mean.
Yeah.
So the story of Captain Clegg actually comes from... Is it a series of books? The Dr. Sin books by Russell Thorndike.
I think there were 7 of them.
Okay.
In total. And yeah, Russell Thorndike, he was an actor himself. He'd appeared in the 1948 version of Hamlet, which also featured a then up-and-coming Peter Cushing. And Peter Cushing was a big fan of the books. Big fan of the books. And Russell Thorndike, the author, he was the brother of the actress, Dame Sybil Thorndike.
Okay.
So it was in the blood. It was in the blood. Now, you're not going to find his name on the credits of the film here.
No.
He doesn't get a credit. I think the problem here was that while they were in pre-production, they got word that Disney had got the American rights to the Dr. Sin books and were going to make their own version of it.
Okay.
Turns up eventually in a multi-part Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Colour adaptation. Do you remember Wonderful World of Colour? Or was that before your time?
No, that doesn't ring a bell.
It was this sort of TV series that Disney had, which had some original material, and sometimes they just chopped their films up into episodes.
Okay.
And very, very strange, but we loved it. And I can remember getting into terrible trouble at school because we had to write a diary of what we'd done at the weekend. And I said that I'd watched an episode of Wonderful World of Colour and spelt it COLOR. I got a terrible ticking off from my teacher. And this is the birth of Kev the Nerd, right? And I actually stood up to her and I said, no, that's what it said on the screen.
Right.
And I've never been the same person since. That was the moment I realised that what was on the screen was vital. And so... this
is where your nerdy kind of... Well, actually, I think you're fine.
I think you're fine. I've got my anorak on. I'm going to tell you all about this in this whiny, droning voice. But yeah, so they made this version of it. It got re-edited into a feature film eventually called Dr. Sin, alias the Scarecrow, which went out in, I think went out in 1963 on a double bill with Sword in the Stone, I think.
Oh my God, one of my all-time faves.
Well, there you go, you see. Yeah, this double bill was doing the rounds for ages, so it's very likely I saw this as a very young child. I was probably taken off to see it. But the thing is that Disney had said to them that they'd copyrighted the name Dr. Sin, but they hadn't copyrighted anything else. Oh. And so they said, as long as you don't call your character Dr. Sin, we'll be okay. We'll be fine with that.
Okay.
And so they were able to do it. But I think it had sort of, that horrible modern political phrase, an abundance of caution, they decided not to credit Russell Thorndike so as to not make it appear that this was actually a Dr. Sin adaptation.
Okay, I see.
We all knew it was. But, maybe they were just being a little bit extra cautious.
And other books. So I assume that Dr. Sin is the Peter Cushing character.
That's right, Dr. Bliss in this film.
Dr. Bliss in this film.
Yeah.
And in the books, do you know if Dr. Sin is also... Like, did he used to be Captain Clegg, or did he also used to be a pirate?
I believe so, yes. I must confess, I've never read them, to my shame. Mm-hmm. They're the kind of books I think as a kid I would have loved. And they're the kind of books that I think maybe I should go and read now, but am I too late for them?
Yeah, are they going to have the same impact?
At 63, I'm cynical and world-weary now. I think if I'd read it when I was, 8 or 9, I'd have probably loved those books.
Yeah.
So, it's one of the great what-ifs. Maybe one day I'll try the book. Maybe I'll give the first one a go.
Well, maybe they'll inject a little childhood wonder.
Yes, yeah. Well, I always tell people
to your current life.
I always tell people don't grow up. It's the worst mistake anybody can make. So maybe I should just, take my own advice and go back and try them and pretend that I'm 8. Not that it takes much pretending. I act like a bloody 8-year-old most of the time anyway. But yeah, so they had that kind of problem with Disney, and that's I think why they didn't credit Russell Thorndike, because I think
really interesting.
Try to distance themselves a little bit from the books so they didn't have any copyright issues.
I also saw credited Barbara S. Harper as a writer.
Right.
Who's Barbara S. Harper and what was her involvement?
Well, she has an additional dialogue credit.
Okay.
Apparently, various people on the film said she only made minor contributions to the script. I wonder if she was writing, because there aren't many female parts in this. In fact, there's one, basically. It's Yvonne Monlaw. I wonder if she helped out on some of the dialogue for her, although she doesn't have much. She doesn't have a great deal. But she was well known to Peter Graham Scott, the director of the film. They'd worked together on a film called The Big Chance in 1957, and another one that same year, Account Rendered. So I guess that's how they knew each other. And I think possibly when he came on board, he possibly thought, this needs a woman's touch. It needs adding something extra.
I love that, yeah.
I'll get her in to do that. And that possibly also explains why it doesn't feel like a lot of the other Hammer films of the time, perhaps, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, she contributes additional dialogue. I wonder if it's the funny stuff.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, because, Anthony Hines, God love him, I love his scripts and everything, but he's never quite as funny as this again. So I wonder if she comes up with all the gags.
I must say, if she has done that, or even if she hasn't, and she has just contributed to Imogene, Yvonne Romain's character, I really like that character. She's not just another kind of love interest / tavern wench.
No.
And there's a couple of moments, one of which I think may have snuck into my favourite moments from the film, where it's not even necessarily dialogue, but it is such a female reaction to a guy being dreadful.
Yeah.
And I laughed out loud, and the way that Yvonne Romain delivers this moment, and I was looking at that thinking, that feels very feminine to me.
There you go. Maybe that was one of her contributions.
It could have been.
I mean, the character is not massively well developed, and she's not, she is that kind of stereotypical sort of woman victim thing.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think Yvonne Romain does a really good job.
Yeah.
I think she does a really good job at fleshing that character out a little bit and sort of just making her a very likeable character. And I like the fate that she eventually gets.
I'm glad that she doesn't get assaulted, and I'm glad that actually when we do get to the end, I'm like, oh my God, I know that we're going to get to it, and I don't want to jump ahead, but when Peter Cushing sort of gives her a little kiss and says, be happy, I was like, for God's sake, what are you doing to me?
Because we know at that point who Dr. Bliss is to her.
Yeah.
We know that they're father and daughter. And I don't think she ever knows that, does she?
Right until the end.
Yeah, right until the end. She goes off. I mean, in fairness, she goes off with the bloke that looks like Oliver Reed. So, I mean, she's not doing too badly out of life, really, is she?
She's doing all right.
I think, that those two are the only people that come out of this film happy, I think. Everybody else is deeply affected by what happens to them, to the point, one of the lead characters is killed off. But they actually go away and hopefully make a happy life for them. I think I probably talked about this before, that in Japanese animation, they have these things, or used to have these things, called side stories, where they'd have the big sort of storyline of some big space epic or something going on for like 52 weeks of the year on television. And then they'd do side stories, which were like things that happened while the main story was going on. The guy who's cleaning the Death Star, who's sweeping up, will get his story for a special episode. And I kind of wonder, wouldn't it have been great if they'd done that to British horror films? We'd had a side story where we see what happens to these characters as they went off and got married and hopefully had terrific lives and had children and all the rest of it. That would have been so nice, wouldn't it? But
it would have been nice. I want this one. I want Imogene and Harry. I want Beth and her handsome newspaper bloke from Shadow of the Cat.
Yeah.
And I want Elizabeth and Paul from Curse of Frankenstein.
Right. Fan fiction writers, start your engines. You know what you have to do now, all right? Watch these films and fill in those gaps for us. That would be lovely.
Yes, please. You make them, I'll watch them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll come on to talk a little bit more about the characters and stuff. But before we do, you mentioned just now Peter Graham Scott, who is the director of Captain Clegg.
Yeah.
Let's talk about him. And I wonder if he did have a bit of an interest in this kind of folk horror. I know it wasn't called that at the time, but this kind of pastoral, folkloric storytelling with a bit of darkness thrown in, because he does go on to make a very famous TV show that definitely now gets lumped in with the folk horror subgenre, Children of the Stones.
Indeed. And he did another one afterwards called Into the Labyrinth, which was, I mean, incredibly surreal. Not sort of folk horror in the same way that Children of the Stones is, but it features folklore characters.
Right.
Children in this sort of weird underworld where they meet all these sort of famous figures from folklore and history.
Do you know what? I think that has just awakened memory within me.
Ah.
That's so weird. Even as you said the title, I was like, that rings a real bell. I think I watched that.
I think it was in 2 or 3 seasons it ran for, series, I should say, over here. I think, it's only about 18 episodes in total because of the way we made television back then. But it was very peculiar. Very unforgettable, really.
That's funny. I'm going to have to look up some images because that's done that sort of like, memory unlocked kind of thing to me.
Tickled something at the back of the brain, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, well, so he'd had that kind of feel for the odd and the unusual and the folky. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think it was there. I think it was there in the British DNA all along, to be honest, long before it became folk horror.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, I used to write science fiction stories for magazines. And I used to roam about on the Isle of Wight, stomping about the countryside, mostly being bored, because once you see one field, you've pretty much seen them all. I know, country lovers, I know it's great, but I'm a city dweller, what can I tell you? I was born in the suburbs of Birmingham, went to the Isle of Wight, then came to London, so what can you do? But I did often have these sort of weird ideas that, here's this field. Wouldn't it be great if something scary happened in broad daylight? And so, I had no idea that was a folk horror idea because no one did back then. And I never did anything about it. I think the closest I got was writing a draft for something about a farmhouse being under siege from UFOs, which was, rubbish, so I abandoned it. But I think it's in all of us. If we brought up in this country, I think it's there because we've had that folklore sort of drummed into us since childhood.
Yeah, like you say, it's almost in our DNA.
It is. I mean, as a kid, I had a whole range of books, and I'm sure they're still going, called Ladybird books.
Of course, yeah.
Are these still a thing? I don't know. But they used to do folklore and folk tales and stuff, and I used to love all those, beautifully illustrated. And I had a whole collection of those, and those were always my favourites. I always liked things like King Arthur.
Yeah.
And things like that, and Robin Hood. And later on, when I found Robin of Sherwood on TV, I thought this was probably the best thing I'd ever seen, ever, because it mixed my love of fantasy with folk tales. And Robin Hood becomes a folk hero. In fact, there's a lot of folk horror in Robin of Sherwood. So it's there all the time, long before any labels were attached to it. We had it in our DNA in this country. So I think, I can understand why Peter Graham Scott might have thought, actually, let's do this stuff about the countryside. Why not?
Yeah. And he's really done an amazing job getting it onto screen. I mean, this is a really dynamic looking movie for, a story about essentially a bunch of Kingsmen coming into a small town and trying to figure out, where the bottles of gin and brandy are. Like, that's essentially what this film's about.
It is.
But it is turned into such a swashbuckling adventure, but even then it does, as we keep saying, it's got this kind of seam of something kind of uncanny like running through the center of it. And it just feels like I say, it's rich.
And I think Scott really excels when he comes to those scenes. The scenes with the marsh phantoms, which are terrifying, and the way he directs them. Got these subtle little zooms in on their faces and on the faces of the people that have been terrified by them. They are really scary.
Yeah.
And those scenes are those scenes are proper horror scenes.
Genuinely. It doesn't matter whether they are actual marsh phantoms, whether this is something supernatural, or whether it is the townspeople dressing up to see off the people who are trying to stop them doing their smuggling stuff. It doesn't matter. Those scenes in themselves are really scary, and they are so effectively done. So essentially what you get is they're men and women on horses, and there's a kind of glow in the dark element to them. So the people have got sort of skeleton costumes on and skull masks, and then the horses are also draped in these sheets that have got the kind of horse's skeleton painted on the sheets. And obviously, you don't know how they do it within the universe of the film, but as we're watching it as an audience, it is shot and lit, so it looks like they are glowing in the dark. And you see, or you hear about stuff like kind of marsh gas and things, and these sort of explosions of things bubbling up from under the earth and them being sort of phosphorescent, or, they often get lumped in with people thinking that they're UFOs and kind of things from outer space.
Yeah.
It wasn't a UFO. It was just it was
marsh gas
being ignited, all of this kind of thing.
That's right.
But I couldn't help with the sort of glow in the dark look of the marsh phantoms. I kept thinking, like, it looks like they've just been birthed, like, out of the marshes themselves.
They do, don't they? They look like they've just emerged from the landscape.
Yeah.
And those scenes are not shot as adventure film scenes. They are shot as horror film scenes.
They are.
And that's the key thing here, that, yes, while, 90% of the film may be an adventure film, when it comes to the big moments, the moments everybody's going to be talking about as they filed out of the cinemas in 1962, they're all going to be talking about the scenes that Peter Graham Scott decided, I'm going to shoot this as a Hammer horror film.
There are those sort of zooms in. It feels very disorienting as they sort of gallop past the camera, and then you'll get it from a different angle, and then there'll be a close-up, and then there'll be loads of them all in shot.
Definitely. I do wonder if Armando de Osorio saw this film at some point and thought, skeletons on horseback, and then made Tombs of the Blind Dead. I don't know. I've no evidence to support that, but I like to think that they are in some way related to each other, even though these are just people in costumes, it turns out. But that doesn't matter. We don't know that at
We
first.
don't. No, exactly. We don't. Also, is there an element of animation used at any point in this film? Because there are a couple of bits where it's just kind of quite a long shot of a landscape, and you kind of see these white horses and figures kind of galloping over the top of it. And that, to me, looked like it might have been done by Disney.
No, I don't think there is. I don't think Hammer would have afforded, animation was quite costly then, pre-computers, it probably still is, but I don't think it is. I think what you're getting is a very surreal setting, because Les Bowie, who did the visual effects, he used a lot of paintings. There's lots of paintings on hardboard, which, used as backdrops, but also matte paintings on glass. So you've got this kind of dreamlike quality anyway. And to add to that, they took black and white footage from the David Lean classic, Great Expectations, and then tinted it to give an even more surreal air to it. And I think it's just a combination of all those things that makes it all look so uncanny and unreal.
Yeah, that is awesome, because it just looks so good. And I love that they're being so inventive in the way that they are creating these moments. Yeah,
I mean, we've talked so often, haven't we, about the creativity of the Hammer technical people.
Yeah.
And the Marsh Phantoms themselves are a great example of that. They use something called Codit, CODIT, which is a silver reflective coating compound, which was used in industry, which is probably not safe really to have been that close to people, but this was 1962. They didn't worry about things like that.
Just hold your breath, guys, it's fine.
Just hold your breath and don't touch it. You'll be fine. You'll be all right. But, let's not forget, these were the same people who, a couple of weeks ago in our story, were electrocuting cats.
Yeah,
so,
good point.
So there was, little sort of laissez-faire attitude towards safety. But anyway, this stuff was just painted onto black costumes to make them look like skeletons. And then they had spotlights attached to either side of the camera.
Right.
Which, when they shot those at the actors, this Codit stuff reflected the light back into the camera. And that's why you get that look that, in several shots, they don't look like people in costumes. They do look like glowing skeletons. And that, I think, that is such a clever way to do that. somebody somewhere, somebody at Hammer, when they said we're going to do this, somebody was looking through some trade magazines somewhere. You know, so the builders may have had, you know, trade magazines, saw this stuff, coded it, and thought, we'll give that a go. And that's how this sort of ingenuity works. It's that kind of spontaneous, let's just try it and see.
Yeah.
You know, and I miss that in modern filmmaking where everything could be done so easily now. I miss the sort of, you know, people having to scrabble around and sort of try new things.
Yeah, the invention of it all.
That's right, yeah. That's what makes these films magic, as far as I'm concerned, yeah.
So elsewhere, sort of in the look of the film, as I said, you know, you've got this really kind of like, it's dynamically shot. I mean, it really is a wonderful film to just watch, but then you get all of the stuff that you could want from a Hammer horror as well. So Bernard Robinson's production design again is amazing. Don Mingay's art direction. We've got makeup from Roy Ashton and hairstyling from Frida Steiger, and I have to include hairstyling because Peter Cushing's hair in this film is so amazing.
It's magnificent, isn't it? It's a good friend of mine and my sort of frequent sort of partner in commentary, Jonathan Rigby, often likes to joke on Facebook that he's going to write a book called Hammer, The Wigs. The
Wigs, yeah.
And it's just going to be the sort of, because they loved a wig in a Hammer film. So it's not possible to tell if that was Peter Cushing's real hair or a wig. I'm suspecting a wig because I don't think Peter Cushing
I think it's probably a wig.
I don't think he was that committed to his art. I mean, he was a very committed actor, but not that committed. But yeah, that haircut is extraordinary. It's a sort of haircut you would think that probably 5 years later some far-out trippy psychedelic band would have copied. And, you know, you'd have
100%.
You'd have seen sort of 5, you know, spotty youths around Carnaby Street with their guitars and sort of paisley clothes and stuff. And I don't know why I'm taking the mickey out of them. That's me, really, isn't it? But that's what, you know, they'd have had that kind of ridiculous haircut. But, yeah, he looks fantastic.
He's got this amazing, a bit like sort of Rogue out of the X-Men, sort of white streak through it as well.
That's right, yeah.
And I'm in my 40s now, Kev. My hair is starting to grey, especially sort of around the sort of sides of my hair. So if I sort of lift my hair up, I've got these shocks of grey sort of down either side. And I don't want it like that, Kev. I just want one long stripe of it, like Peter Cushing in Captain Clegg or Rogue out of the X-Men. And I think it's very unfair that I'm getting this sort of salt and pepper situation when basically this is what I want.
My heart bleeds for you, honestly. You know, as a man who's got very little hair left and all of it's grey, I mean, come on, you're talking to the wrong person if you're looking for sympathy here, Darke. You really are.
I know. I just want it known that I think that Peter Cushing's hair in this film is particularly marvellous, and I actually kind of envy it.
I quite like Patrick Allen's haircut as well. He's Captain Collier, the leader of the King's Men. I kind of like his.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, they sort of. I don't know if they're historically accurate, but they feel like they're historically accurate.
Yeah.
I can look at these costumes and hairstyles and everything else and think, well, that looks like Smugglers from, you know, whatever year we're in. Can't always feel that way with a lot of films, but this you can, and I think it does actually. I think they all look magnificent in this film, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, as usual, the only sort of really anachronistic bit is Yvonne Romain's makeup. Because even though she is dressed in, you know, sort of a busty wench out of the tavern type costume, she does also have 1962 blue eyeshadow and winged eyeliner. So, you know.
and the most perfect eyelashes.
I know. There's just no getting away from it. It doesn't matter whether this is anachronistic or not. It's 1962. She's getting blue eyeshadow and winged eyeliner, and you're going to have to cope with it.
I mean, the only thing they missed out was the camera going all hazy when it looked at it, which was the other big cliche of the time, wasn't it? You know, like, do you remember in Star Trek it used to do that? That used to drive me mad as a kid. I could never understand why were all the women out of focus. You know, it's like, you know, I worried for years there was something wrong with me.
Because it's Captain Kirk being horny. Everybody knows that.
It's the horny haze, isn't it, that you used to get in Star Trek.
There's loads. I think we've already kind of mentioned it, but this is swashbuckly, right? This is lots of kind of action action. There is fights and people kind of rushing around in groups, sort of trying to chuck barrels on and well, it's not even barrels, is it? Coffins full of bottles on the backs of wagons, and horses galloping across the landscape, and like there is lots of really good kind of just Sunday afternoon swashbuckle action going
It's action packed, isn't it, from beginning to end? Yeah, it never lets up. And got a couple of people to thank for that, I guess. First of all, we ought to talk about the fight arrangements were by a guy called Bob Simmons, who was a leading fight arranger at the time. And he was going to go on to do something quite extraordinary that same year.
Go on.
I'm credited for it, so not everybody knows about it. But when you went to see Dr. No, first of the Bond films, that man that walks across the screen in the gun barrel sequence, that's Bob Simmons. So the first man on the big screen to play James Bond, technically... Yeah, I'm fudging it here, but he's technically is Bob Simmons. We all know it's Sean Connery, but technically it's Bob Simmons.
Technically, actually, I think you'll find it's Bob Simmons.
You'll find it was Bob Simmons who first played James Bond on the big screen. So, but yes, he was. So he actually, he's about to do something quite extraordinary, really, but nobody knew about that for many years.
That is very cool. That is a good fact.
Isn't that a good one? I do like that. And the other guy we need to thank is the stunt supervisor, Paddy Hayes. And between the two of them, they do extraordinary work here. We're used to seeing sort of stunt scenes in Hammer films all the way back to Dracula, where, sort of Peter Cushing throws himself across that table, which is amazing. But this is just so full of stunts and so full of action. It's amazing. You may not realise this either, but you've seen Paddy Hayes already. He was in Hound of the Baskervilles. He was doubling for Peter Cushing and also stood in for Christopher Lee in the parts of the spider sequence.
I thought for a minute, I don't know why, I thought for a minute you were going to be like... And, he doubled for the Hound.
The Hound,
yes. When he was leaping over things, it was actually...
I think you'll find that Paddy Hayes actually played the Hound of the Baskerville. But, no, he was Peter Cushing. So, when Peter Cushing's doing all the dashing about at the end as Holmes.
Yeah.
And when Christopher Lee was doing that spider sequence, during the bits where it got a little bit too much for Christopher Lee, and he was getting too scary, I guess, then, in came Paddy Hayes. So we've seen him already on this journey. We'll probably see him again.
That's cool.
He worked on the TV version of the Quatermass Experiments. So, there's a lot of Hammer connections with these people. There really is.
Yeah.
But their work here is extraordinary. Absolutely brilliant.
There's one particular fight scene, which is between Milton Reed's sort of mute pirate. They refer to him as something not particularly pleasant or PC in the film, but they also refer to him at one point as the Ferret. So I'm going to call him Ferret.
Yes. Yeah.
And the reason they call him the Ferret, it's hilarious, is because he's literally like their kind of truffle pig. So they...
That's right.
Or, like a ferret, where they give him some wine to sniff, and then he's kind of going round the rooms in this tavern trying to find the wine, just literally with the power of his nose. It's hilarious.
I mean, to be honest, sort of wine doesn't exactly stink, but it has got a unique aroma. It's part of what they do in wine tasting, isn't it? They stick it up their nose before they swallow it. So you think any fool could do that? Why have they got this poor fella who's already been through quite enough already? He's got this horrific scene at the start of the film. Ooh. Why are they demeaning him this way? Horrible.
He gets we'll get back to the actual fight in a minute, but Ferret gets the most horrible punishment at the beginning. So basically he has on the pirate ship, on Captain Clegg's pirate ship, Ferret has attacked Captain Clegg's wife, who it turns out later was expecting their baby. Yeah. And she actually ends up dying in childbirth. And Captain Clegg gets his revenge by, and this is very brutal. Now, I mean, revenge where revenge is due.
Sure.
And this guy was a pirate, so, fine. But he gets his... What it's described as his ears slit. And you don't really understand what that means at the time, although the look in his eye lets you know that it's something quite horrible.
Yeah.
And then when you later catch up with him and you see his scars, he's literally got these 2 huge scars, one down either side of his head. And he's got a bald head anyway, so you can kind of see it very clearly. And they go literally, don't they, Kev, straight through his ears from like top to bottom.
That's right, yeah.
Oh!
And he has his tongue removed, doesn't he?
And he has his tongue removed, which is why he can't speak.
Which is why he can't speak. And that's, that's straight out of The Mummy, isn't it? But,
yes.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a horrible horror. You don't see very much, which is why it got the A certificate. I think if they'd gone the full Hammer treatment on it, they'd have got an X for sure. But it's the implications of it are really quite unpleasant.
They are.
And there are a couple of scenes like that. We'll see later on. We'll see Dr. Bliss being unmasked when Collier sort of rips his collar away from his shirt to expose the rope burns around his neck, where he'd been tried for piracy, found guilty, and they tried to hang him, and he'd managed to evade it. He'd used various people. There's like a little look, isn't there, to Jeremiah Mipps, that sort of suggests that he'd been involved in the escape.
Yes.
But he'd actually been hanging from the rope, and he's got these horrible rope burns around his neck, which kind of mirror the kind of scars that he'd left.
Yeah, that's it.
On the ferries.
And yeah, it's really kind of selling the whole time this sort of brutality that was rife amongst, pirates and then the sort of king's sailors. But also they're really... They're not shown in this film as being any better than pirates themselves. They are drunken louts. They are reveling in destruction. They are leery and sexually inappropriate to the women. They're sort of getting into fights and all of this kind of thing. And you just sort of don't really feel like there's a huge ocean, let's say, between being a Kingsman of the Navy and being a pirate, apart from like one is officially sanctioned and the other one isn't, They're
just flying different flags, aren't they?
Yeah,
that's all it is. But yeah, I mean, this is, sort of like a bunch of blokes being let loose with swords, and they can do whatever they want without any control. So they become monsters. That's what happens, isn't it? And it's like, it is actually quite disturbing, I find, that our sympathies are supposed to be with them, but by the end of the film they've switched completely, because even Captain Clegg turns out not to be the monster he was painted to be. He's had a moment of redemption and he's been saved, whereas Collier is just one of those I was only following orders types. Well, you can follow orders and question what you're doing and modify your behaviour, that's fine. But that, and I wonder if that's sort of, because these guys all sort of lived through the Second World War, and that was a defence we heard a lot at Nuremberg and so on, that I was only following orders. I wonder if that's sort of baked into these kind of stories as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting in terms of the timing. And I think that kind of blind obedience from the Kingsman in this film, that would make a lot of sense. If there was something...
They never question their own morality in this film. They've been told you've got to find, these smugglers, and then, Collier becomes obsessed with the notion that Captain Clegg is still alive, and it just all common sense goes out the window. We're the King's men. We can do what we want, and we can do it to whoever we need to do it to. And it's quite disturbing.
It is. And, some of their behaviour has absolutely nothing to do with, their sort of obligations as part of their role.
Not at all.
It's literally, as you say, these sort of ordinary men being handed this power, and how far will they push it?
How far will they abuse it? That's the thing, isn't it? It's the abuse of that power that they're given. And I think, when you were saying earlier that it's not, the class warfare thing isn't quite as prevalent here as it is in other films, I think maybe it is, because we've got those sort of, these are agents of the government and therefore of a higher order, supposedly.
Yeah.
They're not. They are working class guys, but they carry a badge. So they feel themselves as being above these common peasants in this village, and then they can do what they like to them because they've been given permission to do so. They have that same sense of entitlement as the toffs we've seen in things like Hound of the Baskervilles. Yeah,
this is true. I guess because it's interesting, isn't it? That because it's not class in terms of kind of aristocracy and the peasants like we've seen it before.
Yep.
You're right. It's more of a kind of, what's the word? Imposed kind of superiority. And so what you actually get is within the community, you get characters like the Squire, played by Derek Francis. You get Harry, played by Oliver Reed, who is the Squire's son. These are kind of the more upper class people, I guess. And there's stuff throughout the film about, Harry, it'll be inappropriate for him to run away with Imogen, the love of his life, because,
That's
she is
right,
just a lowly bar wench and all of this kind of stuff. But actually, you get the Squire really sticking up for Parson Bliss or Dr. Bliss.
That's right,
And there is quite a lot of just community spirit, and it's very much this kind of military presence, I guess, that comes in and throws the cat amongst the pigeons, and they are definitely seen as the opposition, that it doesn't really matter so much within the community what class you're in. It's like these guys are the enemy. Do
you know what? This has literally just occurred to me, so hold on tight. We're going to go with this and see if it works.
Okay.
Are you ready? My little dissertation for the moment. You see the film Went the Day Well, the Ealing classic about... have you not seen... Becky, you need to see it. Brilliant film. Not a comedy, but it's brilliant. It's about a small village somewhere in south of England, which is visited by a bunch of British troops who are going to be billeted there for, various reasons, who then turn out to be a German invasion force.
Oh, my God.
And the villagers of all social strata have to band together to fight back. It is one of the best films you'll ever see.
Oh, my God.
Absolutely magnificent. And it just suddenly occurred to me, that's kind of what's going on in this story.
Yeah.
That you've got these interlopers from the outside, this sort of military force turning up, giving them a hard time, so everybody pulls together, no matter, what social level they're on. They're all fighting for the same cause. And I wonder if that's, either it's a deliberate nod to the film or whether that's just something terribly English.
It could be. I mean, we don't like a bully.
We don't like a bully. We don't like an outsider.
No.
We don't like people coming around throwing their weight about and telling us what to do.
I guess what else is interesting within that is you could say, oh, well, they just don't want their smuggling ring broken up because this is how they make their money.
Sure,
but the Squire doesn't know about that. And yet,
right, he doesn't.
Even as the person, as he's kind of the chief justice or the chief magistrate or something like that. So he really is at kind of the top of the strata in the town, in the village. Even though he has no financial interest in kind of making sure that the smuggling continues, which you would normally expect to see. It usually goes, all the way to the top, right?
Indeed,
And here it doesn't. And yet still, especially like even in that end scene, he is there. They've gotten him out of bed and he's a bit grumpy about it. But he is still there seeing off Captain Collier and his men because he's not having it,
Even as the penny starts to drop, he knows whose side he's on.
Yes.
He knows which side is the right side. And so, so maybe that's a very English thing that informs both films.
Went the Day Well.
Went the Day Well. If anybody out there listening hasn't seen Went the Day Well, please go and see it. It was streaming on Amazon Prime in the UK at one point, but go watch it. It is a glorious film. A glorious film. One day we will do a podcast about it and I will give you my treatise on why it's a science fiction film. But I won't do that now. This is not the place.
Okay, amazing. Another one for the patrons.
Another one for the patrons, maybe, yes.
Don't get excited, anybody. We haven't set that up yet, but it probably will come at some point.
I hope so.
So, all right, we've started talking about this brilliant cast, Kev. Let's start really diving into it with the magnificent Peter Cushing, who is on blistering form in this film. He is charming. He's dastardly.
Yep.
He's a bit cheeky. He's got a bit of a wink to the camera.
Yeah.
He is just superb. And I really loved what you said before about him being a fan of the Dr. Sin books, because I really like the idea that he kind of had this idea in his head of like that character, because it does feel like he makes it feel lived in.
He does, doesn't he? Yeah. I mean, this is not just some sort of stereotypical smuggler or even a stereotypical comedy vicar.
Nope.
There's a lot more to Dr. Bliss / Captain Clegg than perhaps was on the page even. You know, I'm running out of superlatives when it comes to Peter Cushing. I really don't know what to keep saying. He's just amazing in this, isn't he?
He's amazing.
And in fact, I don't know whether you noticed, we didn't get the Cushing finger so much as the Cushing double finger, which is now beginning to sound positively disgusting. But when he's in the pulpit at the end, sort of railing against Captain Collier, he raises two fingers.
Oh, he really means it.
Not that two fingers, but like a double Cushing finger, because, yes, he's making that extra point, isn't he, you know?
Yeah,
and I think what a performance. He makes a terrific parson. The opening, first time we see him, his opening moments when he's in the church and he's leading the choir, leading the congregation in singing. And he makes them stop and do it again because we can do better. This is very enthusiastic conducting that he's doing. You know, and I think, you know, I'm not in the slightest bit a religious person, but I think I might start going to church if there was someone like Peter Cushing leading the congregation. I really do.
He's so funny. Like, this is where you immediately start seeing some of the sort of warmth and wit.
That's right,
of not just the character, but the film, because he sort of, you know, they're not quite singing as joyfully as he would like them to be singing their hymns. And he sort of tells them off and says, actually, you know, you've got a lot to be thankful for. You've got food on your plate. And then he kind of motions to the squire and says, some of it a little too much.
Yeah, that's right.
And then he might say something like, you know, you've got a beautiful church to worship in, even if the choir don't always sing in tune. And he sort of motions over to Mips. And there's like a real kind of, you know, yes, they are being told off by their pastor for not singing sort of passionately enough, and he's about to make them start again from the beginning. Come on everyone, once more with feeling. But it's this sort of warmth and this sort of jokiness to him, which he sells really well.
He makes a nice comparison. We're going to see him eventually play another religious character in Twins of Evil, where he's much more of a hellfire,
okay,
sort of puritanical type, whereas here he's very warm. He's very accommodating. You kind of get the impression that even as a, you know, sort of a heathen like me could turn up at his vicarage and would be made to feel welcome.
Oh yeah,
he'd break out the you know, the sort of what is it? He had the bacon and kidneys for breakfast, you know.
Yeah, bacon and kidneys.
As a vegetarian, I'd have to make my excuses, but, you know, yeah, he would still be accommodating. And I think he does that so well. And he does that sort of switch between being this lovely, affable country vicar and the slightly more ruthless Captain Clegg.
That's right. Really
nicely. But the affable vicar never goes away because he's had his moment of epiphany before the film starts.
Yes.
And now what he's doing for his community. I never get the sense that this version of Captain Clegg that we see in the film itself is actually in it for monetary gain for himself.
Well, no, he's literally says at one point that he's not, or somebody says it about him,
right?
Because what's the mean Rash?
Yeah.
The guy Rash who runs the pub.
That's right.
He's having a bit of a moan at one point and he says, oh, you know, he's done all right out of it, you know, the pastor. And I think it's Mips who says, oh, yeah, done all right about it with all of that money he gives to the poor to make sure they've got clothes on their backs and food in their bellies or whatever.
Exactly.
And so yeah, you're right. Like he's definitely, you know, he's a rascally old pirate, but he's definitely now, he's a Robin Hood figure, right?
Yeah, he's a very complex character. He's a very complex man who, you know, when we first hear about Captain Clegg or what he's done, we hate him. And then when we come to realise that it's actually this rather lovely Dr. Bliss, we kind of think, oh, OK, we're a little bit torn at first. What should we think? And by the end, as we've intimated, you notice we're slowing down a little bit because we don't want to get to the end because we're going to cry again, aren't we? We are actually in tears at the end of this film because of him.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a very complex relationship that we as an audience have with the character, and he's a very complex character in himself.
And it has some fantastic lines as well.
Oh, yeah.
There is some brilliant... He's so, like... He's just like trucking no fools at all with Collier. There's an amazing bit where he says, Collier says, we're staying the night in Dymchurch. And because Captain Clegg has put down the orders to everybody in the town that the Kingsmen aren't to be offered rooms, he just goes, are you? I wonder where.
Yeah.
And then Collier's going on about Captain Clegg, and he'd have had him hung, drawn and quartered if he'd caught him. And the pastor just goes, I'm sure you would, but you didn't catch him, did you?
He's got the driest sense of humour of any Hammer character, I think. It's so funny. But like I say, you said earlier, it's not sort of, obvious comedy. It's not some knockabout stuff. It's born off the character.
Wit.
It's wit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's organic from the character. This is what the character's like. He's just a very witty guy.
Yeah, it's great. Well, and also he's witty, and also he's just got no time for it, has he? He's like...
Yeah.
You and your men, you're just... We're going to get rid of you as soon as we possibly can, so don't make yourselves comfortable, He sees
them for the strutting peacocks they are.
Exactly.
And he's not having any of this nonsense from these guys. These are just, silly little boys playing at being soldiers as far as he's concerned. And he'll see them off eventually, which, he kind of doesn't, but he does win them over, I think. The very final scenes, there is actually... some remorse on the faces of the King's men.
Big time.
It's not, look, we'll stop beating about the bush. Captain Clegg dies at the end. He dies at the end. But, when they're burying him, which is the most incredibly moving moments, the King's men are there and they're removing their hats and they're saluting him.
Yeah.
Because they realise that he's actually, not only has he been a worthy opponent, but actually he wasn't the man they thought he was.
Yeah, exactly. So then obviously we've got Yvonne Romaine as Imogen. Now, we saw Yvonne Romaine a couple of weeks ago in Curse of the Werewolf. And rather than being Oliver Reed's love interest, she was his mum, because she was the mute servant girl at the beginning of the film. Now, when we say that in one film she was his mum and this time she's his love interest, this isn't bad casting. This isn't,
not at all.
Angelina Jolie and Colin Farrell kind of nonsense.
Sure.
Obviously, there was a larger age gap where you jump forward in time and Ollie Reed has grown up.
That's right, yeah.
Here they are appropriately age-matched, and
That's right,
she's also got a lot more lines than she did in the last one, because last time we saw her, she didn't speak a word, and here she is lovely Imogen, who is, as we've said, she works in the pub. Her legal sort of guardian is this nasty man called Rash, played by Martin Benson, who owns the pub. But her real father is Captain Clegg, and it turns out that she was actually that baby his wife gave birth to right at the beginning of the film.
You'd think that they planned all this, wouldn't you? You'd think they'd actually thought this through. It's amazing. I love it. She gets a bigger role here. She's just absolutely bloody gorgeous, isn't she?
She's amazing.
So lovely. She's just wonderful. And you can see why. We also talk about the other young lover in this. You can see why Harry falls for her. Mm-hmm. And Harry is played by... And I'm going to sort of pause for a second here, because Becky's going to need to compose herself.
Thank you. Just fan myself slightly.
You'll hear a little thud as she swoons off the chair and hits the floor. But... played by Becky's favourite, everybody's favourite, Oliver Reed.
God.
Are you okay there?
He's so good.
Are you okay there?
I'm fine. I'm fine, don't worry. I've splashed some water on my face. I'll be fine. And, he is doing the classic Oliver Reed thing. He is such a hero in this film, because... He's the upper class gent in this. As we said earlier, he is the squire's son. To the outside, people think, he's just another sort of aristocrat or whatever. But actually, no, he's deep in this smuggling ring, and he's doing it all for, the community and stuff. And he's trying to figure out a way that he can run away with the love of his life. He's the bloke in the scarecrow, so he's getting his hands dirty with all the others. And he's really standing up to these sort of military interlopers as well. He is so heroic and so gorgeous.
He does a little bit of brooding. He doesn't do as much brooding brooding as he did in Curse of the Werewolf, perhaps, but he broods a little bit, and when he does, the screen catches fire, doesn't it?
There's also, I'm going to say this now, rather than just list it as one of my many favourite moments, because otherwise, Kev, when we get to that point, I'm going to be going on for 20 minutes.
Oh, we'll be here all day, won't we? Yeah.
So I'll pepper them throughout our chat instead. There is this incredible bit where Rash has come onto his ward, Imogen, who he's supposed to be looking after, but actually, obviously, he's got designs on her. Of
course,
he's this nasty bloke. And she sort of confides in Harry about it and sort of falls into his arms weeping. And she's like, I can't go back there. Harry goes round and he bursts into this room and he says something like, if you ever even look at Imogen again, I am going to kill you. Yeah. And then he slaps him round the face with his gloves. And Kev, I was like, Oliver?
Yeah.
Reed.
Just take me now. Just take me now.
If anybody was ever going to come to my defence over anything, I would want it to be you, because that was amazing.
I can't always tell how these things work, but I think if I was a woman, I think I'd be madly in love with Harry. I know I wouldn't condone the violence, but here's a man who is so in love with the woman that he loves very clearly, that he will stand up to the government. For stand up to the landlord and stand up to everybody. You know, he doesn't care. He doesn't care what happens to him. He just wants her to be safe and to be happy. And, you know, maybe I'm taking a very old-fashioned view of what women want, but honestly, if I was a woman, I think that's what I would want from my man, to be honest. I think I would just want them to love me the way I would love them. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? I'm probably getting into all sorts of trouble and heading for cancellation here.
It makes sense, Kev. It makes sense. And certainly in the context of this film, if I had just confided in my upper class bit of stuff, who let's face it, all the way through the film, she is afraid to believe that he loves her as much as she loves him. She's afraid to believe that his promises of them getting married and running away together, he actually means it, and is he just doing it for, you know, the reason that blokes in these films normally do, which is to get his end away. And she's very, very cautious about it. And then at this point, when she trusts him with this horrible thing that's happened to her, he reacts, again, in the context of the film, in the way that she needs him to react, which is she needs him to march round to the pub and to her home and to say to this bloke, if you ever even look at her again, you're not going to see sunlight, you know?
Perfect. And what I love, that the writing is so good with these two, that you never get that feeling once. She might doubt it, but as the audience, we never get the feeling that she's just his bit of rough.
No.
You know, she's a bit of rough trade, bit of local girl to play with. He absolutely adores her.
Yeah.
He's head over heels in love with her. And that is such a beautifully written. I wonder maybe if I'm being stereotypical again. I wonder if that's where what's her name, the woman with the additional dialogue, came in, writing some of the lovey-dovey stuff.
Barbara S. Harper. Yeah, maybe.
I'm being stereotypical. My apologies, but at the time, that's what it might have been. But whoever wrote it feels like a very real, very loving relationship.
Yeah, I love it.
Those two play it brilliantly. And like I say, I would love to know what happened to those two characters, because I really become invested in them by the end.
And also, the other bit that, you know, really sort of pulls at my heartstrings at the end of the film is when they get married. And not only that, but Parson Bliss / Captain Clegg / her dad does the deed and marries them. And I am like, oh my God, it's so beautiful.
And I'm sure I saw at one point, maybe I was just projecting, but I'm sure I saw at one point during the ceremony that Dr. Bliss glances at Harry, almost as if to say, you better appreciate every single day how bloody lucky you are. You better appreciate that you are batting well above your average here, son, and you'd better appreciate this. It's just that little look, you know, that dads will always have, you know, that little glint in his eye. And it's a beautiful relationship. The whole thing is just so tragic that she never knows that this man who was, you know, sort of there as the village priest and who was kind of, you know, the pillar of the community was her dad. You know, it's so really sad. So sad. So.
Captain Collier, who we've spoken about quite a bit up until now, is played by Patrick Allen. And he's very good at being this sort of quite nasty guy.
He's very bullish, isn't he? There's no nonsense about it. And I've got to say, he's a square-jawed hero, and jaws rarely came as square as they did on Patrick Allen. I mean, he was the most square-jawed man in British cinema, and he's terrific. I always loved Patrick Allen. He was always one of those guys, always a tough guy.
He's very familiar to me, Kev. Where else do I know him from?
You will have known him from all sorts of things. I'm going to double-check my facts for a second, because I want to say this, but I'm beginning to doubt myself here. Was he not the face and voice? Certainly Barrett Holmes adverts. He was certainly the voice of that. There was a series of adverts in the 1970s, 1980s, where he played a kind of James Bond type to try and sell us these sort of prefab houses, basically. Barrett Holmes, they were cropping up everywhere. And he was sort of flying around in a helicopter, being very macho and very tough. You two can have your own home, that kind of thing, And it's like, yeah, really? I don't need to be sold it this hard. Honestly, I just want a roof over my head, But that's one of the places you'll know him from. But, he was in so much TV, and he was in film.
Oh, he's on some of the Carry-Ons.
He's in a load of he's done a load of that sort of stuff. He did The Wild Geese, The Seawolves, Puppet on a Chair. He was first film.
Oh, he's in Dial M for Murder.
That was his first film, yeah. And that's it, of course. This is what I was double checking, that it was really him. You will know his voice from those terrifying Protect and Survive films.
Oh, God.
You will remember these things with that horrible, jaunty little jingle. There were public information films about what to do if a nuclear war broke out, which was basically take all your doors off their hinges, stick them up against the windows, and hope for the best. And he was the voice of that, and it was kind of terrifying in a way, and it was more terrifying because he was the voice of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And if you didn't see the adverts, if you're a fan of 80s music, you would have heard his voice on the Two Tribes single by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. That they've sampled those adverts.
Is that what that's from?
That's from the Protect and Survive adverts.
No shit, that's amazing. And I love Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
They're low-key terrifying, those adverts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of aware of them sort of slightly removed, because I don't remember them at the time.
Sure.
But if you've got any interest in these sorts of... Again, this is coming back to sort of weird 1970s, 1980s British TV, these kinds of public information films. It's that kind of sort of area of pop culture, isn't it?
It's that era that where I've said this so many times, and there are whole books written about this. If you haven't read the Scarred for Life books, I would highly recommend those. 3 huge, great doorstops of books looking at exactly this, about how in the 60s, 70s and into the 80s, British television was on a single-minded mission to warp the minds of any child that was watching.
We've turned out all right, Kev.
Well, that's up for debate, really. But yeah,
she says twitching.
It was that culture that made us the people we are today, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
we were terrified. Every time you turned the television on, there was either going to be, sort of a Protect and Survive ad later on, or there was going to be a Cyberman lurking around the corner. Everything was bloody terrifying as children. No wonder I'm a nervous wreck as an adult, but there you are.
Exactly. No wonder we're all on anxiety meds. Come on.
Exactly.
Spirit of dark and lonely water looming over us.
Please don't. Young people today, you've no bloody idea. You really don't.
Well, there you go. Patrick Allen, partly responsible for traumatising a generation.
Absolutely. Well played, man. Well played.
Now, I want to talk about, because it's a bingo moment. We're going to go ding, ding, ding. We're going to go...
Yeah.
Michael Ripper watch. Here he is.
Here he is.
But Kevin... This isn't any old Michael Ripper bingo.
No.
This isn't unnamed coach driver or grave digger or something. He has got a full role in this film, and I love it.
It's his best role for Hammer, I think. I think it's certainly his largest role. He's actually a proper full-on supporting character. Like you say, he doesn't just turn up and deliver a funny line and then wander off again, which he often did in a lot of his films, or stand behind a bar looking scared. I think I was reading, I think it was it Matt Gemmell on the Hammer Lovers Facebook group, said that he once told him, I looked good behind a bar. Because he always played barman or coach drivers. Not here. He's got a proper personality, a proper character. And you know what? It takes a special actor to be able to steal a film from Peter Cushing. But by God, he comes close.
Yeah.
He's so funny in this. He has a real talent for comedy. And we see that perfectly here. There's a wonderful bit when they're showing him, he's showing off the body of Tom Wretch. The Sidney Bromley character at the beginning, the guy with the big bushy beard who was in all British films at the time. And he's been frightened to death by the marsh phantoms. And he shows him the body, shows Collier the body in the coffin. And he's looking a bit grim. He said, oh, yeah, sorry, I haven't had time to touch him up yet.
Yeah.
And he's got this very macabre sense of humour, this real sort of bleak gallows humour. And he plays it brilliantly because he doesn't do the sort of nudge, nudge, wink, wink, look at me being a bit funny. Again, he's very subtle. It's just the way the character is. As you say, it's just coming off
of the character, yeah.
Yeah. He's just a bit of a joker. He's the joker in the pack, as it were, in this operation. He is terrific. I think it's a brilliant performance.
Yeah, he's so good.
He's best for Hammer. Yeah, certainly.
He's so good. There's also an amazing bit. I mentioned it earlier that he's sleep. He used to be a ship's carpenter.
Yeah.
And that's how he knows Captain Clegg.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yes.
And now he builds the coffins for the town, but also, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, the coffins are how they are smuggling the booze.
That's it, yep.
He sleeps in one of his coffins.
He does. It's kind of a little joke, I think, about Dracula, isn't it?
It's 100% a joke about Dracula. I would be completely bemused and disbelieving if anybody said anything else. Of course it is.
Of course.
Because what happens is one of the Kingsmen comes in and he's looking around and you don't even notice the way the camera is. You don't even know that Mips is in there. And he literally just sits straight up like Dracula would. It's so funny.
It is so funny. And like I say, it's the subtlety of Michael Ripper's performance. He was a very subtle performer a lot of the time. And it's the fact that he doesn't mug at the camera when he does it.
Yeah.
He just sits bolt upright as if Mips does this every day, which obviously he does, and as if like, how dare you come and disturb my
slumber, my
sleep? I'm having a bit of a snooze here. There's no campness about it. There's no broadness about it.
But that makes it all the funnier.
Makes it all the funniest. Comedy, I find, with the honourable exception of Carry On, which is, a law unto itself, comedy for me works best when it's subtle. Having said that, I did watch an episode of Bottom this morning, which is really not subtle at all and made me laugh like a drain. So, I mean,
that's the exception that proves the rule,
these are the exceptions. I like subtle comedy. I like it when they're not winking at us.
Yeah.
I don't like it when comedies try to tell me this is the bit to laugh at.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like having a laugh track in a film. It's just, I don't need that because I will work it out. And I think, he plays it with such a light touch. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Really good. Really. He gets all the best jokes.
He does.
He really
There's
does.
even a nice moment after I think he's done the I haven't had time to touch him up yet bit.
Yeah.
Then when the Kingsman goes out, he sort of looks at old Ketch in the coffin. He just goes, thanks, matey. Because he's sort of helped him,
that's right.
Put him off the scent or whatever. It's so good. And I really loved just seeing a bit more from Michael Ripper, because obviously we mentioned him so much, but it's only ever in passing. It's just like, here he is in this one. This is, he's the coachman or he's the barman or whatever.
Well, if we turned you into a Michael Ripper lover, this is the film to watch.
Right, exactly.
This is the Hammer film to come back to, because you won't see him again as much as this. And I think, he's very good in everything he does, but this is just terrific. He's got that sort of cheeky, chappy sort of personality, which I think the film needed to stop it from being too grim.
Yeah, definitely, actually. Although saying that, there are other really nice lines delivered by some of the other actors.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Always in sort of complete, just facetiousness, I suppose, against the Kingsman. There's a brilliant line delivered by Peter Cushing when, in fact, both of the two that I'm about to reference are related to the Scarecrow. And when Captain Collier shoots the Scarecrow in the arm to try and prove that actually there's a man in there and they're signalling about the smuggling. And then they run down and the man has gotten away, but there's blood on the sleeve of the Scarecrow, right? And so then they think it was the pastor, and Collier goes round and he says, let me see your arm. And he sort of grabs his arm.
Yeah.
And the pastor flinches and you think, oh no, they've got him.
Yeah,
and then when he pulls his sleeve back, there's nothing there. And he says,
that's right.
Oh, well, why did you flinch then? And he says, you stood on my foot. Yeah. And then later, when they find out it was Harry in the Scarecrow, and he says to him, well, what's wrong with your arm? He says, oh, I cut myself. And he says, well, how did you do that? He goes, shaving. They've just got no respect for him whatsoever. And I love how they are not suffering this guy in any way. They're not going to kind of kowtow to him. They are just taking the piss the entire time, and I'm here for it.
You get these moments peppered right throughout the film, don't you? These little moments of levity.
Yeah.
And they're not really outright comedy. We're not talking about, people rolling around on the floor and all the rest of it. It's just this sort of... I love the cheekiness.
Exactly. It does. It feels cheeky.
There's, the way one of them will lead off the entire King's men in completely the opposite direction, claiming, I've seen the Marsh Phantoms, and takes them on this wild goose chase through the night while... back at the windmill, isn't it? It's the windmill, incidentally, is the same one used in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I thought I'd throw that one in there.
Ooh, love that. Good trivia.
In real life, it was derelict at the time, but they renovated it in time for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. So we're only seeing the outside of it. The inside would have been back at Bray. But anyway, yes, they're back at the... windmill and at the sort of the undertaker's office, all the rest of it. They're loading up and trying to get away in their hearses, with full of booze. And this one villager has sort of volunteered to go and lead these horrible Kingsmen off into the night, taking them in completely the opposite direction. It's just this sort of unmitigated gall of these villagers, and I absolutely love it. I think they're fantastic. And it's like I say, it's not sort of like, rolling around on the floor laughing, but you do watch it, you think, oh, you clever buggers, that's so funny, that's really clever.
Also, anybody, in fact, our producer Mike, when he's editing this, might enjoy this. When they are at the windmill loading up the wagons, they're sort of reading out where they're being delivered to, and Kent is getting some good stuff, because apparently they've got gin and brandy going to Maidstone and Canterbury.
Well, that's Kent for you. No, I can't say that, I'll get into trouble again, won't I? Kent's lovely.
As a lifelong resident of the southeast of England, it's just nice to hear these familiar names come up in the middle of these Hammer films,
Getting your little mention in of your hometown, it's great, isn't it?
That's right. That's great. And I think there's a mention of Rye at one point as well. I think, is that where Captain Clegg had his trial?
That's
I think was at Rye Prison or something. So it's all round that way.
Yeah. Although not shot anywhere near it, of course, because that was just Hammer's way.
Yeah, well, exactly. All right, we've skirted around the edges long enough. Have we steeled ourselves to talk about this very beautiful and very sad ending to this film?
Well, I think that's why we needed some of this comedy.
Yeah.
And I think, they knew they were heading towards this very tragic finale. Mm-hmm. And I think by having the levity running through it, when it actually happens, it hits much harder.
I think that's right.
It really hurts at the end of this, because it's been kind of a light-hearted adventure romp with a bit of gothic horror layered on top. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden, something horrible happens. You tell them, I'm going to cry otherwise.
Okay, you have a little silent sob in the background.
I got my little tissue out. No, I can't cope anymore.
So, Ferret has obviously noticed throughout his time spent in the village that Parson Bliss is actually Captain Clegg, because obviously he would know him intimately, as he was the man who ordered him to have his ears slit and then be left to die on an island. Then it turns out that the Kingsmen, when they were out there on their ship, they kind of picked him up from this island, and now he works for them sniffing out bottles of wine. Fine. So they bring him to this little township where the smuggling's going on. And when he first sees Captain Clegg, he sort of lunges at him. Now, luckily for Captain Clegg and for the plot, he had his tongue cut out, so he can't actually tell anybody. But he is on this sort of singular mission throughout the rest of the film to confirm his suspicions and then take his revenge. So at one point we see him digging up the grave of Captain Clegg, which sits outside of the church that Parson Bliss does his sermons in, digs up the grave and confirms that it is empty. And then right at the end, when they seem to be sort of getting, I guess they're getting to the point really where actually the sort of smuggling ring and everything is falling to bits, and they all get into a bit of a scuffle.
Yeah.
And Mips and Parson Bliss / Captain Clegg are sort of trying to get away. Ferret comes in and he has got this huge spear and he throws it at these two men, and it looks like it's about to hit Mips. And obviously, because he's a good man, Captain Clegg throws himself in front of it and basically sacrifices itself and takes it in the back, mortally wounded. We've just watched him marry off his secret daughter to the love of her life, give her this very tender kiss on the cheek and just say to her, be happy, and sent her off to, live this happy life with his blessing, even though she doesn't know that he's her father, but, it's still this very beautiful, touching moment between them. Now he has sacrificed himself for his friend, and the film ends with Michael Ripper's Mips carrying the corpse of Captain Clegg out to the empty grave as Mips has tears streaming down his face. Yeah. And the Kingsmen kind of line up around the grave. And as you said earlier, Kev, either saluting or taking their hats off and sort of holding them to their breasts. Oh, my God.
Is not Michael Ripper absolutely bloody heartbreaking in this?
It is.
He's been the comedy foil all the way through this, and then suddenly at the end, there he is, tears streaming down his face. The one person in his life he's trusted and he loves. I mean, he loves Captain Clegg. And he's gone because he sacrificed himself to say. And it's like the look on his face as he carries that body out. And, who else was going to carry that body but Mips?
Exactly.
None of the other members of the gang or the Kingsmen dare get in his way because they know full well that he has the right. He's earned the right to do that.
That's exactly it.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful moment, the likes of which we haven't seen in a Hammer film yet.
I mean, it floored me. And you're so right. You're going along. It's like, yay, pirates. Ooh, smuggling. Yeah. Marsh phantoms. Oh, romance. It's like, la, 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 la. Bit of humour thrown in, bit of wit and cheek. Wonderful stuff. And then at the end of it, I was like, oh my God, I have been eviscerated emotionally by this movie.
It's such a clever bit of writing to completely wrong footing. Can you imagine what that must have been like sitting in a cinema in 1962 and watching that?
I'd have been inconsolable.
It's just like, where the hell did this come from? But it works so brilliantly. It kind of doesn't really come out of the blue, because when you watch it again, you do get a sense that there is a kind of sort of dread of something coming. There's an inevitability to Captain Clegg's fate.
But yeah, I mean, like I said right at the top of this chat, I didn't expect much from this film with the synopsis and the title and stuff. And then by the end of it, I was like, well, it's got everything, and now it's one of my favourites because
I'm
I
delighted.
may have been pleased up until this point with, you know, all of the other stuff that we've talked about at length, and then you get to the point where I'm like on the verge of tears. I was like, "Fuck you, Hammer! I can't believe you made me feel feelings."
You're a big softie, aren't you? You really
I
are.
am.
But it's entirely understandable. I think you would have to have a heart of stone not to be moved by this, not to be moved by the fact that, you know, this man has found redemption. Has devoted his life to his parishioners in a strange sort of way. He's not a conventional vicar by any means. So, you know, there's not many, I assume there aren't many vicars out there still practising smuggling. So it's not something I think the church would actually approve of. But to hell with that, he's doing what's right for his people.
Yeah.
And he's sacrificed his life already to his people and then does it literally for his friend. It's extraordinarily moving.
He sacrificed a relationship with his daughter.
Yeah.
You know, to try and keep her safe.
Yeah. Yeah. What a man.
Sake.
What a man. What a man. And this was a man who did something absolutely awful to the ferret, but it's that moral ambiguity that I find so satisfying about this film.
Yeah.
That he starts
absolutely. It's not like a saccharine sweet film at all.
No, not at all. No, they don't hide the fact that he was a pirate and was quite a ruthless pirate at that. But we are invited to understand that he's changed, and he's changed for the better. And I love that. I absolutely love that.
Well, let's talk about some more favourite moments and end on a real high.
Yes.
I've listed a couple of them.
We need something to go out on a high now, don't we? Because it's just so sad otherwise.
I've listed a couple of them. There's obviously Harry going and standing up for Imogen. Love it. There's Mip sleeping in his coffin. Hilarious. Love it. Then, there's You Trod on My Foot as well, which I think is hilarious. Yeah. Now, there are two others that I really want to draw attention to. The first one is, at one point, poor old Oliver Reed's Harry gets taken off to another room for a bit of a beating by the Kingsmen. Yeah. But you don't get to see it at all. You stay in the main room with, I think, Captain Collier and maybe one other person, but you just stay in the main room, and all you hear, Kev, it's amazing, is ow, ow, ah, ow, slap, ow, 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 ow. And it's like the most amazing sound to say.
Have you put the film on? I can't believe I'm listening to the film again. It's so realistic.
Yeah, just call me Becky Foley Artist Darke. That's me. I was absolutely howling because it was just so funny. It's like, we've seen people have, you know, like even in the same film, we've seen people literally murdered with daggers and slapped around the face and stuff. And yet at this point, they've just decided, no, we're just going to do it with sound effects off screen. It was so funny.
And it also, in a way, kind of makes it a bit darker as well as funnier, because you start to laugh at it and then you start to think, oh, wonder what's really going on there.
Well, yeah, because you think, why aren't they showing
exactly
us?
What on earth could be so bad that Hammer don't want us to see that?
Right.
Of all people. Oh, you know. The fact is, I think they were aiming for that A certificate, that's all. But your brain will fill in some gaps and actually make it a lot worse than it actually is.
I thought it was hilarious. And the other one that I want to mention, and this is something that I alluded to earlier, is the thing that, although we can't be sure of the contributions of Barbara S. Harper to the script, I am convinced that this has got to be one of them. And it's, as I said earlier, it's not a line, it's a gesture. Yeah. And Rash comes in to Imogen and he's, you know, trying it on with her, basically. Mm-hmm. And she says something like, please get out of my room. And he says, not until I've given you a kiss goodnight and told you a bedtime story, which is gross. And all she does is rolls her eyes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And this poor woman, and in that one moment you see the weariness of the female sex just dripping off of this one woman's gesture in response to this horrible, like, abusive, manipulative, exploitative guy who is trying to get it away with the girl that he is supposed to be legal guardian for, and he's like, not until you give me a kiss and told you a bedtime story. And she just rolls her eyes, and I'm like, babe, I feel you in that moment.
It just screams, not this crap again, doesn't it?
Exactly.
You know, that's exactly what it is. And if it wasn't the screenwriter, it might have been Yvonne Romain, it might have been both of them. But that is definitely something I don't think that Anthony Hines would have written.
No, I don't either. I also like the idea that it might have been Yvonne Romain, and like maybe her and Barbara S. Harper, maybe they had a bit of a conversation about it if they had the opportunity to do that. Like, what would be funny at this point is if you didn't even say anything, just roll your eyes.
Just roll your eyes. That's all you need. That speaks volumes. That speaks so much. It really does. Yeah, wonderful.
So yeah, I mean, I think out of all of the films we've talked about so far, my favourite moments have been by far and away the most, because I just loved it so much. Anything we haven't talked about, Kev, that you want to draw attention to?
Mostly very broad stuff. Peter Cushing doing a lot of fantastic props work in this, playing with his glasses and playing with all the bits and pieces on the breakfast table and everything. And I've mentioned before that he was such a master of using the props to build a character. Really good stuff here. Every time Michael Ripper opens his mouth is a highlight. He's just so funny. All the scenes with the phantoms are wonderful.
So good.
But there's a lovely little bit, which is really actually quite funny at a very tense moment, is during the wedding scene, and a ring gets placed on the Bible. Dr. Bliss, Captain Clegg, looks up at Mips, and Mips just kind of indicates off screen, and it turns out it's a curtain ring. from the curtains in the vestry. And it just like, the way Captain Clegg just looks at him like, well played, well done, I like it. That's clever. And the other bit I suppose I ought to mention, because it is actually a lovely little bit, if you look very closely, you're going to see Kate O'Mara in this film. A very young Kate O'Mara. She's in the scene where they're taunting the ferret in the tavern.
Oh, yeah.
And she's one of the carousing tavern girls.
Oh, that's a horrible
And, we're going to see her again later on in The Vampire Lovers, and Doctor Who fans know her as the Mara and all the rest. Not the Mara, the Rani. And so, she's going to be... And she was in some big soap opera. Was it Triangle?
I'm not sure.
One of those things that the BBC tried out before they did EastEnders and got it right. They tried out a couple of, like, El Dorado was one, Triangle was one, and they were all rubbish. But I think she was in Triangle. She became quite a big name. But here she is in a completely uncredited role, looking very, very young. Watch it again. You'll see her during the taunting of the ferret. Mm-hmm. And so those are mine. But like you said, there are so many moments in this film. We could just list the entire thing, couldn't we?
Just love it. I just loved it. What did other people think, though? Did it do okay commercially?
Well, it sort of suffered the same fate, kind of, as The Shadow of the Cat.
Oh, what?
That went out with The Curse of the Werewolf, which kind of underperformed. This one went out with The Phantom of the Opera, which we're going to talk about next week, and it didn't do very well in the UK either. Did much better in the States. It was retitled in the States, Night Creatures, to try and sort of bump up the horror.
Referring to the phantoms.
Yes, right. Yeah, there were the Night Creatures. It was also, perhaps not coincidentally, it was the title that Hammer wanted to give their proposed screen version of I Am Legend, the Richard Matheson novel, which had to be abandoned because the censors said there's no way you're getting this past us. So they were going to call it Night Creatures. They then flogged it off, and it became The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price. But it didn't do as well as might have been expected.
Wow.
A shame.
It is a shame. It is a shame. Well, I think we love it enough for, for history's sake.
Yes, I think so. In fact, you know what? I know what the next question's going to be. I know where we're heading for this.
Preempt me. Where's it going?
Where do we rank this?
Yeah.
And my ranking has changed.
Oh.
I was going to say upper. I'm now going to put it in lower elite.
Yes.
I think I persuaded myself that it's actually an incredibly good film. I knew it was a really good film. I do think it's actually up there. It's having watched it again last night, it is... I had so much fun with it. Mm-hmm. What more do you want from a film than to have fun? And I had so much fun with this film. What about you? Where are you rating it?
I'm putting it in elite as well, definitely.
Good. Excellent. We're in agreement still.
We are. And I think, same as you, I was just having so much fun with it. And I think it was easily on its way to being upper, like easy.
Yeah.
And then I got to that end, and I know that I joke that I don't like feeling feelings.
Sure.
But actually, for a film to get into my sort of higher tiers.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, fine. Like, I do quite like it if it makes me cry.
Of course
okay,
we
I'll
do.
admit it.
Of course we do. We if we're watching a piece of art and not feeling something, then what's the point?
I mean, to be honest, there is absolutely a place for that sort of thing. A bit of escapism, bit of dumb, turn your brain off and let it wash over you. I'm here for it. But those films aren't necessarily going to reach the upper echelons of my
no.
faves of all time.
They're not the films you're going to come back to in a year's time or 2 years' time and think, oh, I wouldn't mind seeing that again. This one, I think you will. I think by the time we finish this journey, you possibly would have watched this again.
Do you know what? It would not surprise me.
I have a feeling the way you're talking about it, that this is a film that you'll come back to sooner rather than later, and quite rightly so.
I loved it. I just loved it. It had everything.
Excellent.
And then by the end of it, I was like, oh, God, oh, dear, oh, no. Oh, there's the pollen count must be high today because, my eyes are feeling a bit stingy.
Well, I'm going to have to go now because I need a little lie down and I don't... oh, poor Dr. Bliss. Anyway, enough of that nonsense. I never was an actor.
Thanks for listening to Hammer Time. We'll be back next week with Hammer's 1962 adaptation of The Phantom of the Opera. If you're watching along with the podcast, this one is not available to stream at the moment, but you can pick it up on physical media. I have checked. To check out the full list of movies we'll be covering throughout our podcast, head to evolutionofhorror.com/hammer. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us questions or comments for upcoming mailbag episodes. You can drop us an email to hammer@evolutionofhorror.com. You can follow the Evolution of Horror Network on Instagram @EOH_network. You can follow me on Instagram and Blue Sky @BunnyDarke. And Kev, what about your online stuff?
Yeah, Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook and Twitter. And all as either Kevin Lyons on Facebook or EOFFTV.
Don't forget to rate and review us on your podcast app of choice. Thank you for listening. Join us next week for another episode of Hammer Time.